So I've spent a lot of time this year talking about the importance of compassion as a skill set and a mindset for managers and leaders to foster the well-being and performance of their people in this sort of wild new future of work that has arrived for us over the last year. And if you haven't been following any of that work, that's cool. Here's the short version. Compassion is about four different things. There's basically four elements or four things you do in compassion that I think make it incredibly powerful. The first thing is you have to be able to recognize suffering in another person. You have to, second, be moved by that suffering. Third, you have to have a desire to want to see that suffering go away, to not see that person suffering or in pain. And then fourth, and this is where the rubber meets the road, you have to be willing to do something or have a want to take action to make that suffering go away. And as you think about that just very simply in those four steps, what could be more important or more powerful as a manager and a leader right now in trying to help our people navigate all of the complex, crazy stuff that's going on, not only in work, but in their lives, right? Knowing that they're suffering, being moved by it, wanting them not to suffer, and then doing something to help. And so I've been doing a lot of speaking and training and writing on this topic, and after a recent presentation I did about compassion and management, I got a question from someone that was in the audience, and I think it's a really important question. It's a really relevant question. It's one that I've gotten frequently over the years as I've talked about sort of my more like humanistic approach to management. And this is the question. I'm going to read it to you verbatim. While I agree that compassion ought to be front and center these days, and it's important for managers to know what's going on in their people's lives, I guess I'm still struggling a bit with how far that should go. And I'd love to hear more from you about that. She goes on to unpack sort of more about her question, like, how far is too far? We don't want our managers trying to be therapists and all these different things. And I think it's a great question because this is a question that I think HR has wrestled with forever, and frankly, we've done a disservice to our managers because we've, over the years, convinced our managers that they need to be arm's length and they need to keep people at a distance, and people should really keep all their drama and personal stuff at home. And over the last year of this pandemic, right, this whole charade of the separation between a personal version of us and a work version of us has just completely come apart. And it was nonsense in the first place. We all know that. It was ridiculous. We are humans. We take our baggage with us wherever we go. And so now we're seeing more of it. We're feeling more of the consequences of all the stuff that goes on outside of work and the impact it has on work. And so how much is too much? How much is enough for a manager to know? That is an important question. And here's what I would say is, if you've been following me for any length of time, you know that all of my work, all of my training starts from a foundation of understanding that work is a relationship for employees. And in order for employees to be their best, to do their best work and live up to their potential, work needs to feel like a healthy relationship for them. And so when you think of work through the lens of a relationship, then the answer to the question, and you realize that actually a big part of what drives that feeling of relationship is the relationship they have with their manager. Then the answer to that question, how much is enough, is, well, it depends. Depends on the employee, depends on the manager, depends on the nature of that relationship, it depends on the needs of that unique employee. Now, the guidance I would offer often is to think about, let's reframe that question. How much is enough information to know about your best friend or your significant other? Like, do you want to know enough about them that you would know when they're suffering, even if that information might make you a little uncomfortable, or maybe it's something you wouldn't want to know? Like, if they were struggling and they needed help, even though you'd be uncomfortable knowing that, or maybe even knowing that creates a little bit of weirdness in your relationship, wouldn't you want to know that so that you could try to get them some help or be helpful in whatever way you could? Of course you would. Of course you would. And so I think when we apply that same standard, if we were to bring that same level of care, that same level of commitment to our employees as managers, then How much we need to know depends. I want to know enough to know when my employees need help. I want to know enough to be able to recognize when they're suffering or when they're struggling. And the answer to the question is probably more than you think you should know, and probably more than you're comfortable with in your traditional management role. But it's enough for you to be effective and compassionate as a manager and a leader. And to do that, one of the things we need to do as managers and leaders, or those that develop and cultivate others, is we need to build better relationship skills. We need to learn to listen better, to ask better questions, to learn how to build trust more effectively, to learn how to be more mutually accountable to each other. Because if we have this foundation of better relationship skills, then that will make it easier to build that better relationship, which will make it less awkward for us to ask the questions, to know what we need to know, to recognize that suffering so that then we can be moved by it and take the compassionate action to help. And as managers, that's what our primary function should be right now. Help. Right? Help, support, care until it hurts, until you don't have anything left. And I know what you're thinking. Well, isn't this too much? It's going to be, how much is too much? What if we overcare? What if we over-enable? And I would say, let's see if we can do that. I'd love to see that. I'd love to have that problem for a change as opposed to the opposite. Right? That's a problem we could all live with. And I hope you agree. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm completely out of my mind when I say this? I would love, drop a comment. Let's continue this conversation, and we'll see where it takes us.